Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantif Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra Sukhinas Santu, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet, Sarvastaratu Durgani, Sarvo Bhadrani Pashyato, Sarvas Sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om.
The song today is on page 18 of the books in front of you. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, the greetings to all the mothers of the past, present, and future all over the world. But for our mothers, none of us would be here today. A word about today's title, Mother knows best. I just thought of this title. I had no idea until last week when someone pointed it out to me that there was in fact a radio and television series back in 1950s called Father Knows Best. I only came to know only just 3 or 4 days ago. And it appears that Swami Sarvagatanandaji, who was our minister here for almost 50 years, he used to say, referring to that serial, Father knows best and Mother does it. A brief history about the Mother's Day itself. Many of you are probably familiar with it, but it's always good to just brush up our memory. The celebration of mother in one form or another is not a recent phenomenon. It's a very ancient practice. We had it in ancient Greece, from where it was picked up during the Roman Empire. Mother is honored and celebrated in many parts of Europe on the 4th Sunday in Lent. The day is called Mothering Sunday. In India, there isn't a single day for honoring mother, but God as mother is worshipped in various forms throughout the year. The modern celebration of Mother's Day has a relatively recent origin. It began in the United States in the last century. It was first celebrated in 1908 when Anna Jarvis held a memorial for her mother in Grafton in West Virginia. She began a campaign to make Mother's Day a recognized holiday. In 1912, she trademarked the phrases Second Sunday in May and Mother's Day and created the Mother's Day International Association. How many of you knew this? See? She specifically noted that mothers, mother with an possessive apostrophe S, should be a singular possessive for each family to honor their mother, not a plural possessive commemorating all the mothers in the world. It was specifically to one's own mother. That was how it was originally conceived. Anna Jarvis was successful 6 years later, in 1914, in making the day an officially recognized day. Jarvis's holiday was adopted by other countries, and now it is celebrated in most parts of the world. Some countries, though, have changed the date to fit already existing celebrations honoring motherhood. These celebrations have diverse backgrounds. Some are religious, others are historical, legendary, or simply secular. The history of the Mother's Day has a poignant epilogue, though. 9 years after the first official Mother's Day celebration, the commercialization of the holiday became so rampant that Anna Jarvis, one who had actually started this day, she herself became a major opponent to see what the holiday had become, and spent all of her inheritance and the rest of her life fighting what she saw as an abuse of the celebration. She criticized the practice of purchasing greeting cards, which she saw as a sign of being too lazy to write personal letters. Anna Jarvis was arrested in 1948 for disturbing peace while protesting against the commercialization of the day. And she finally said that she regretted having started it. I think it's good. It's not that getting greeting cards is bad in itself, but I think it's good to keep this at the back of our mind, that when we celebrate something, that the spirit of the day is preserved and not just gets into symbolic acts of just giving a card and so on. Now, Mother's Day continues to be one of the most commercially successful occasions in the country. Not a surprise there. This day would not have survived without the support and continuous promotion of the florist industries and other commercial industries. I'm not quite sure about this, although some people believe that these
industries have kept it alive, I think this would have remained alive, but probably not in the form and not so visible, maybe in a public sphere as it is now. But having said that, after this brief look at history, I think it's also good to recognize that Mother's Day is not simply for mothers, or not mothers as we commonly understand. Really, Mother's Day is for everyone, for men and women, boys and girls. The truth is that the essence of motherhood has nothing to do with gender or age. Being a mother means being offering unconditional love, being kind, unselfish, forgiving. Qualities that we naturally associate with motherhood. So to the extent we are able to manifest these qualities in our own lives, each of us has a mother within our own heart. So although this beautiful song that we sang in the beginning, remain in our hearts, O Mother, I would like to add a little bit, or at least make it more obvious of what the song intends. Yeah, sure, the mother should remain in our heart, but the unspoken message there is that what is in our heart should and would manifest in our lives. So mother will remain in our heart, but that essence of being a mother will manifest in the way I think, will manifest in the way I relate with other people, will manifest through my actions. Otherwise, simply keeping mother in the heart and not having that essence of motherhood in our lives, it won't be useful. It's like the essence of Vedanta, for instance, or these high and noble values and qualities that we cherish in our life. Just keeping them within us would not be useful unless they manifest in our lives. And so that is the unspoken message of that mother remain in our heart, but remaining within our heart, transform our heart to such an extent that the essence of motherhood manifests through my thoughts, through my words, and through my actions. We know that a Holy Mother, whom we all adore and worship and love, was not a mother in a conventional sense. In fact, we know, who have studied the life of Mother and Ramakrishna, when Shama Sundari Devi, Mother's mother, Holy Mother's mother, sometimes say Holy Grandmother. So Shama Sundari Devi, when she once lamented, "Oh, my daughter will never have the joy of motherhood, will never hear someone calling her mother." And when Sri Ramakrishna heard this, then he assured her, he said, "You need not have any worry about that. There'll be so many people calling on your daughter as mother day and night that she will have no rest at all." And we know, it's true now, that children and devotees of Holy Mother are now all over the world. And because of this, the earth is a sphere. And so because of different time zones, really there's people calling Mother 24/7. And so really, Holy Mother has no rest. So motherhood, we see how the meaning of being a mother expands the more we reflect deeply over it. Our teacher, and especially the spiritual teacher, can often becomes our mother in life. Just as mother gives birth to us in this world, as our spiritual teacher, our guru, is the one who gives birth to us in our spiritual life. Swami Shivananda, a great disciple of Ramakrishna, used to say that, speaking about when they were young and they used to go to Dakshineshwar, he said, whenever we went to Dakshineshwar, we always felt we were going to meet our mother. Now again, when you look at Ramakrishna, a bearded personage, we normally wouldn't think of such a person as a mother. But that's what Swami Shivananda and many of the direct disciples said, that whenever they were in his presence,
They did not think, oh, he's a big saint or a great incarnation or this. They just said, we felt we are sitting in the presence of our mother. Some of you who may have seen that there was a movie on Shankaracharya's life in Sanskrit. Did some of you remember seeing it? A few years ago, we had even arranged for his shows here. Of course, Shankaracharya is known brilliantly as a brilliant philosopher, a great intellect. He has written commentaries on all the Upanishads and the Gita and all of that. But there's one very brief scene in that movie, which I personally found very moving. It's not about all the intellectual victories that he attained and all those wonderful things he did. There is this one brief scene in the movie when we see that Shankaracharya just sitting near his disciples who are sleeping. It's early in the morning. They are all exhausted. They haven't woken up yet, and they are just sleeping. And he just sits there and so lovingly just kind of pats their head. It's so moving, just like a mother would do to her child. And those of us who have a spiritual teacher, who have a guru in our lives, recognize what it means to be in the presence of a mother. In India, in Maharashtra, there is a saint called Saint Jnaneshwar, lived in the 13th, 12th, and 13th centuries. So he is often referred. There are many songs and prayers attributed to him, and songs on him. And in many of the songs on him, he is really referred to as a mother. In fact, they call him as a Mauli. Mauli in Marathi means mother. So Jnaneshwar is referred to as Mauli. Then in fact, Vishnu, one of the forms in which the divine is worshipped by Hindus, in Maharashtra, Vishnu is worshipped in the name Vitthala. And again, there are some songs addressed to Vitthala or Vishnu as mother, called Vithayi. What it shows is that although Hindus worship God or the divine in many different forms and many different names, the gender identities are always very flexible, as are their forms and names, because the recognition that God is beyond form, beyond all names, beyond even gender. And therefore, when we worship, the worship of goddesses, we just said that God as mother is worshipped throughout the year in the Indian subcontinent. So even when we worship the divine as mother, for instance, when we have worship of Durga or Kali, it is in the ritualistic worship, even a worship, we offer the sacred thread as one of the offerings in the puja. Now, traditionally, the sacred thread is worn only by men. But again, for the worship of goddesses, and even worship for God, the identity that this is a male deity that I'm worshipping, or there is a female deity, these gender identities are very quickly get transcended. Now, just as there is mother present within us, I said that no matter whether we are men or women, boys or girls, so long as we are able to manifest these qualities of motherhood in our own hearts, there is this mother, the essence of mother within us. If this makes sense, then it is not unusual or difficult to recognize that whichever way we may think of the divine, there is a mother present in the divine as well. And just as our biological mother gives birth to us, it's the divine, the mother in the divine, which gives birth to all this creation. So since we trace the source of everything that we experience, everything that we see, to one source, and that source, because everything has come from that source, it's not unusual to think of that source as a mother. Even when we see God as Father, clearly in many Semitic traditions, God is seen as a father. Now, even when we see God as Father, we still associate God as Father with the qualities we associate with motherhood. We see God as kind, as loving, as just, as all giving, everything that is associated with motherhood. So it's only a step further from seeing the mother in God to seeing God as mother. And so we see how it doesn't seem so heretical an idea as it might have seemed maybe 100 years ago, not so much today, because the divine feminine has kind of entered into the common discourse a lot more in the last century than in history, especially in the Western world. So it's not, we see that when we begin to think about the divine and the qualities associated with the divine, we see that it is only natural, whether it is theologically permissible or not, whether it is popularly accepted or not, it's very natural within our hearts to think of the divine as mother. If we look at our lives, sometimes we will see that, and this is not true of everybody, but the general pattern of our lives is that when we are very young, very young, and then we naturally believe and trust everything that is told to us by our mentors, by our parents, by our teachers. And if we are, and it's like this, when we are very young, we think, my parents know everything, whatever. And it's interesting though, no matter what age our parents are, still to a child, a parent is a parent. The age really doesn't matter. Sometimes when I think about how old my mother was when I was little, and when I look at other women of that age now, they don't appear to be all-knowing to me the way my mother appeared. But that time I never thought of my mother as, well, mother is a mother. We never think of mother as oh, she is just 24-year-old young girl. We don't never think of her that way. And of course, we are too small also to think about it in those terms. But when we grow up and look back at our lives, we suddenly recognize when we were little, our parents were very young also. And but they never appear as immature or inexperienced. They always appeared as all-knowing. So mother knows best or father knows best, I think is the experience of most of us, especially when we are very young. Then things begin to change a little bit. So they say when in our early teens, near 11, 12, 13, and then we kind of think, oh, there are some things my parents don't know. And then, of course, as we grow a little bit older, then we say, oh, they don't understand me at all. So when we are saying as teenagers, and if we grow older, we feel there's just a big gap. They have no idea. They don't understand me at all. And then that phase then kind of continues for a while. And then we get married, and then we start our life, so to speak, in the world. And then we begin to have a more direct confrontation with the world. Earlier in our growing years, it's almost it almost gets filtered some ways. We always have a protective shield, so to speak, of a family, and so on. And sometimes it's recognized, sometimes it's not recognized. Sometimes it's very obvious, sometimes it's not obvious. But later, as we grow older, a time comes in the lives of us all when we kind of break out of the shell. And in the beginning, it seems like a great lot of freedom. But later we realize, suddenly, when we have to confront with the realities of the world directly on our own, we learn a lot, sometimes through our successes, oftentimes through our failures, from the things that we get right and the things that we don't get right. And then, sometimes then the things that we had heard from our mother or father, then they start coming back to the mind. Say, oh, my mother used to say like that. And then says, oh, maybe she was right. So then we kind of begin to see, well, they knew a little bit. It's not like they didn't know anything. And then as we go older still, and then we look back, and then suddenly we come back a full circle, and then we say, yeah, really. And then we begin to realize, because having become parents ourselves or grandparents ourselves, then we are better able to appreciate what our parents, what our grandparents went through. And then we again kind of come a circle and say, yeah, my mother was best, my father was best. So just as this circle, again, it's not something that necessarily happens in every life, but this is a general pattern that happens in many lives. Something like that happens in our religious lives also. If we are raised in a religious household with a religious background or upbringing, then when we are very young, we just listen to whatever our parents say. Go and pray in the morning, just go folded hands, and oftentimes you are asked to say some set prayers or chant some Sanskrit shlokas, and we all do that very well. And then, of course, the same thing happens then as we grow a little bit older in our teenage years, especially if we have not been told what all those rituals meant. Then we just begin to wonder, what is this am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. And these are the kind of experiences often teenagers have. And I get to meet a lot of students of this category, both at Harvard, MIT, and other campuses. And they often tell me that when they were young, how they used to go to the local temples or church, and how they did everything that their parents said, and they say, now it doesn't seem to make any sense at all. I have no idea what I was doing. I have no idea why I should be doing it, because I don't even know whether there is God. I don't even know whether all of this. And partly the increasing secularization of life, both on campuses and outside, is definitely responsible for it. But also, I think a lack of spiritual education. Sometimes we tell our children what to do, but not why they should do it. And I understand, so it's not always easy to answer every why question. I mean, there is a limit. For instance, you say, do this. Then the child says, why? Then you give an explanation. But no matter what explanation you give, there's always going to be some why to it later. And after some time, you're going to lose your patience and say, just do it. Why questioning is a good practice in general, although it can be taken to very ridiculous extremes. We need to know how far it should be taken or can be taken. But in general, not just for children, even as adults, I think it's always good to ask ourselves why. If my mind is thinking in some way, it's good to ask why. Why is my mind thinking this way? Or if I want to do something, or if I want to choose something, I want to decide on something, it's good to just pause a little bit and ask, why am I doing this? Or why am I saying this? Why am I choosing this? And if you get a good answer to that why, I think just go ahead and do it. No problem. But sometimes you might discover that if you ask yourself why, you may not have any answer at all. Then it's good to pause and say, okay, let me see if there is any good reason why I'm doing this. The reason this is helpful is that a lot of the things that we do and say in life are done without mindfulness, without reflection, without awareness. We just do it. Now, sometimes when it all works out well, there is no problem at all. But a lot of times it doesn't work out well. And then you kind of say, oh, what was I thinking? So you say something stupid, say something which is hurtful, or say something which breaks other people apart, and then you regret, or you get angry, and you say something, or you make some stupid choice, and then you regret. So it's always good to ask why. So why questioning is actually a very helpful practice. Even in spiritual life, when you feel, okay, I must pray and meditate every day, I think it's good to ask, why should I pray every day? Why should I meditate? And make sure that you get an answer that you're comfortable with. If we decide to do only those things which are truly meaningful, think of only those things which are truly helpful and beneficial, our life will become much simpler. We will suddenly find we have a lot more time in hand than we think we have, because so much of our time, so much of our energy is wasted with thoughts, words, and actions which do no good to anybody, neither to me nor to anyone else. And it's a very helpful practice, therefore. In fact, if we even decide, even before saying something, if we ask ourselves, why am I saying it? We might discover that many of us might become better listeners, because oftentimes we just speak. We don't think before we speak. We first speak and then start thinking. As it is sometimes it is said that what is the opposite of speaking? Opposite in the sense, when someone else is speaking, what are others doing? And normally we would say, well, in a group of people having conversation, if one person is speaking, the others are listening. But no, very few are really listening. If you see, most conversations, well, I wouldn't say most, but in many conversations, if one person is speaking, most others are just waiting, say, when will I find a gap and then I'll get to say what I can. And so very few people are really listening in any conversation. And so being a good listener is always very helpful. We have no idea how much we miss in life because we are so eager to speak and that we don't listen. Now, speaking itself is not a bad thing, but when we speak, if we know why we are saying what it is that we are saying, then it's wonderful. But if we just say it because I just feel like saying it, then at least from a spiritual standpoint, that's not very helpful. And that's why an occasional practice of silence, or mauna as it is called, is helpful, because it helps us to step back and do this why questioning. And so, going back to what we were saying before, this was a big detour. Now, so when we are little, therefore, oftentimes we tell our children or grandchildren what they should be doing, but not often why they should be doing it. Swami Vivekananda often actually says quite a bit about this. We often tell our children, be good, be truthful, be honest. But we don't often tell them why you should be truthful, why you should be honest, why you should be good. And because we don't tell them that, when they grow up and they find that, well, being good, honest, truthful is not a very good idea. Especially when you see people who are dishonest, people who are not truthful, apparently being more successful, apparently rising through the ranks than people who are good. And so we should find a way. Clearly, you cannot give very high philosophical abstract principles to little children. That just won't work. But we have to find a way of communicating with the growing generation in a language, in an idiom they can understand, about why it is that they are doing what they're doing. Because that would really help them when they grow up and then these questions start coming to their mind. Or why am I doing it? And if they have already been trained and taught from a young age, then this middle phase, which often can be very trying, both for the growing teenager as well as for the mentors and the parents, that can be a little bit easier on both sides. And so that is what happens. So many of the students I meet and they say, oh, it all appears meaningless. And then again, for one way or the other, again through life itself will teach them when they confront difficulties, challenges, and when they again somehow in their 20s or 30s then turn, recognizing that while help can come from the support groups in our lives, whether it's family or friends and so on, but there are certain things in life which needs a much deeper, much greater, a deeper support than the structures we have around which can provide us. And that's the time again then, it's a time to again like go back the circle, and then we think, oh, let me see, let me pray, let me meditate. I remember when I was little, my mother used to tell me that, let me do it again. And so that's how, just like our relationship with our parents or mother comes a full circle. In spiritual life also, as we grow older and as we become more, again, age itself is not a guarantee for maturity. Well, as we grow older, we might become physically mature, but not our physical maturity and mental maturity. Physical growth and mental growth should normally keep in step, but they don't. And so sometimes we might remain mentally or morally, intellectually or emotionally immature even as we become physically mature. And therefore, as we become both mentally and spiritually mature, then we begin to realize that yes, the things that we had learned in our formative years are true. And that's how then God as mother, or mother in God, becomes more and more meaningful in our lives. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that spiritual life can be seen as recognizing how we are related to the divine. He sometimes said, for those young disciples who would come to him, Sri Ramakrishna said, it's enough for them to know two things, who they are and who I am. Which is really what spiritual life is all about. Swami Vivekananda once defined religion as religion is the eternal relationship between the eternal soul and eternal God. In other words, we look within our hearts and ask who I as a person really am. And then we look at this entire world, everything other than me, look at this and say, what is the purpose? What is the truth behind all of this? From where did all of this come? And no matter what name you give that source from which all of this came, and in general, as I sometimes we just wrestle with the word God. So if you think of that divine center from which all of this has sprung, and you call that divine being as God or the Supreme One or Brahman or whatever name you like to give. So the idea is how I as a person am connected with or related with that source of all creation. Once I know how that relationship is, spiritual life becomes relatively easy. Now, there is no one definitive answer to that question. Sometimes people are kind of marshaled into thinking, this is who God is, this is who you are, and this is your relationship. Now just accept it or get lost. That simply doesn't make sense, because seeing the enormous diversity within us, that we are so similar in many ways, and we are so different in many ways, each of us. And that's the beauty of the life, beauty of the world in which we live, that there is similarity and there are differences. Now, because of these differences, if we just had one way of relating to God, one way of recognizing God, one way of recognizing who we are, not only would that be boring, but it wouldn't also be something that is relatable or acceptable to all. I mean, just think about it this way. If you go to a mall now, for no matter what you want to buy, there is so much choice for everything. Sometimes we are burdened with choices. Sometimes we are not able to decide what we need. But that's a good problem to have, rather than, oh, there is no choice. Either this one thing, take it or don't take it. So it's good. It's good that we have this freedom to think of the divine, to think of ourselves in many different ways. All that we need to see is in my frame of reference, with the kind of person I am, the kind of way I think and feel, which is the most natural, spontaneous way for me to relate with the divine. And some of the ways of that relationships are always have gotten codified in different traditions. One of the ways, of course, is God the Father and I as the child of God. God as the mother and I as a child of God. But there are other ways of relating as well. There have been great saints and mystics, great lovers of God, who have seen God as their child and themselves as the mother. So again, it is a mother-child relationship, but the roles are reversed, and God becomes a child. The Swami Vivekananda once said that the closest we can come to seeing and understanding God's love is through our mother's love. In this relative plane, in this material plane, the closest we can come to think of truly unselfish love, that's the mother's love. So if that selflessness fills our heart to the extent that we begin to see ourselves as even the mother of God, then God becomes a little child. And there is this a great saint in southern India, probably 1200 years ago or so. He was once praying to God, and his heart was so filled with love for God that he completely forgot his identity as separate. You see, it's like this. I mean, one of the signs of love is that it removes separation. It leads to unity. So when we say, I love God, and yet when we pray, we say, oh God, I love you so much. I need this, I need that, I need that, which is good. So we love God, but our love hasn't reached its culmination yet, because my I is still there. I'm still thinking about my needs. I love God, but God, please give me this. So which is okay. But what will happen when my love reaches that highest point, when my me is completely wiped off? Then only you, the divine, remains in the field of my consciousness. That is what happened to this saint. And it's remarkable. When he started praying, oh, I'm just translating it. It was originally in Tamil, it's one of the South Indian languages. And he says, oh Lord, may you live long, may no troubles come to you. Just like a mother would pray for her baby, this devotee of the Lord is praying for the Lord. Now this really doesn't make sense. I mean, theologically, why would someone pray for God's long life, or say that no obstruction should come in God's path? But if you look at the love there, that this person's I has so vanished that the devotee here becomes the mother and God becomes the child. There are other ways of relating to God as well. Clearly, we see God can be seen as friend, and of course in the devotional scriptures, and in Hinduism, there's a lot written about this. So there is really virtually no limit to how we can relate to the divine. Sri Ramakrishna's life, we see that the dominant relationship in his case was that of a child to the mother. And he used to say that, he used to call it Santana Bhav, is being, looking upon oneself as a child of God. And he said that's a very pure, very, very tender relationship.
And that was the dominant relationship in his own life, which is not to say that every one of us should have the same. Again, people are different, but that is one of the ways that comes naturally to many people, to see ourselves as a child and God as the mother or father. So these are some of the thoughts that come to mind as we gather to celebrate Mother's Day, thinking about our own mother, thinking about the essence of motherhood in the hearts of every person, thinking about all the mothers the world over, of past, present, and future, and thinking about the mother present in the divine and seeing the divine as mother, and re-evaluating our own relationship, asking ourselves, how do I see myself in relation to God? Do I have any relationship with God? The relationship doesn't necessarily, it's not, again, as I said, there are no limits to it. And it's possible that some people may be temperamentally not suited for any of these kind of relationships that we are familiar with. Sometimes it could be very philosophical. So you see God as the infinite one and I as a part of that infinite, which is fine, but that's still a relationship of a part to the whole. And again, as with that story of the incident I mentioned from the life of that great saint who completely forgot his own identity, whose identity was completely merged in the divine. When that love for God completely overwhelms us, the I, the ego, completely vanishes. Then whether we see ourselves as a child or as a part or whatever, everything then becomes one. The child and the mother, or child and the father, the part and the whole, everything becomes one. And when there is oneness, all the limitations that we are aware of in our lives, all the difficulties, challenges that we experience in our lives, all of those things vanish when everything becomes one. And that's the goal of spiritual life, that, as it is sometimes said, we all come from the divine, and we are here now, apparently separated from the divine. The goal is to go back to the divine. So on this Mother's Day, these and similar thoughts can help us go deep within our hearts, pray to the Mother to remain in our hearts, and also manifest through the way we think, the way we talk, and the way we do our things in life. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother again and again. Next Sunday, the Buddha's birthday comes in this week. So next Sunday we will observe the Buddha festival. We'll have the Antar Yoga with the readings related to Buddha and songs and reflections all related to the Buddha. That will be next Sunday at 11. You're all welcome for that. On Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita at the study group meeting at 7:30. And on Tuesday and Saturday, our Arati and meditation will also continue as usual at 6 o'clock. So you're welcome to these programs. We'll conclude with a prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the all-loving being become manifest unto us. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May the Divine bless us all, fill our hearts with infinite grace and love. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.